Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful. When he rejected you, he thought he closed the book on you. He thought you would disappear, crumble, or wait for him to change his mind. But what he never expected was that his rejection would be the very thing that makes him unable to stop thinking about you, because nothing is more haunting than realizing the person you pushed away is now the one who shines so brightly without you. The moment you stopped needing his validation is the moment you became unforgettable, and that's why you live rent-free in his mind. And rejection has a way of cutting deep, doesn't it? It can feel like a door slammed shut, like you weren't good enough, like you somehow failed at convincing someone to see your value. But what if I told you that rejection is not the end of your story? It's the beginning of a powerful shift. That very moment when someone says no to you can actually become the seed of desire in their mind, the spark that makes them unable to stop thinking about you. Because here's the truth, people don't miss what never mattered. They miss what they realize they can't have once it's gone. And when he rejected you, it wasn't a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of his capacity to recognize it in that moment. Sometimes people don't know what they're holding until they've already let it slip through their fingers. And the worst thing you can do after rejection is beg for validation, chase him, or try to prove he made a mistake. That only confirms his choice and reinforces the idea that he holds the power. But when you stand tall, when you refuse to let rejection define your confidence, when you continue to live as if nothing has been taken from you, that's when the tables turn. And think about it. The most unforgettable people are not the ones who beg for acceptance. They are the ones who radiate strength in the face of rejection. You don't become unforgettable by clinging. You become unforgettable by thriving. And that's what makes him think. That's what makes him remember you in the quiet moments of his day. When he rejected you, maybe he thought you'd crumble. Maybe he thought you'd fall apart. Maybe he thought you'd sit there waiting for him to reconsider. But when you didn't, when you kept moving forward, when you showed that you are complete with or without his validation, that's when the regret begins to creep in. And there is something magnetic about a person who knows their worth. It's the energy that says, I don't need you to choose me for me to feel valuable. That energy unsettles him because the human mind is wired to value what it can't control. And when you are not available at the snap of his fingers, when you are not on the sidelines waiting, suddenly he starts questioning his decision. Suddenly he begins to play back the moments with you in his mind, wondering what he overlooked, wondering if he was too quick to dismiss you. And this is where rejection becomes your superpower. You get to rewrite the story. Instead of being the person who was left behind, you become the one who got away. And nothing eats at someone more than the realization that they let someone extraordinary slip away because they didn't see clearly in the moment. You don't have to convince him of anything. The way you live your life post-rejection is the loudest message you'll ever send. And imagine him watching you glow up. Imagine him scrolling through his feed, seeing you smiling, moving forward, not broken, not bitter, but thriving. That's the moment he feels the sting, because he expected his rejection to lower your value in your own eyes, but instead it elevated you. It forced you to step into your strength, to focus on yourself, to show the world that no one person has the power to define your worth. That's when he starts thinking about you more than ever. Because nothing haunts a person like the realization that they underestimated someone who refused to be diminished. And he rejected you because in that moment, he thought he had options. He thought the grass might be greener elsewhere. But here's what often happens. He discovers that the grass wasn't greener, it was just different. And while he's figuring that out, he can't help but think back to you, to your laughter, your presence, your energy. People don't realize how rare certain qualities are until they're gone. And now, in the silence you left behind, his mind replays those moments over and over again. But here's the key. This isn't about him. It's about you. Because the moment you make it about him, you fall back into the trap of needing his validation. The power of this transformation lies in the fact that you moved on not as a performance, not as a tactic, but as a choice. You chose to value yourself regardless of whether he did. And that choice is magnetic. That's what he can't stop thinking about. The freedom in your eyes, the confidence in your step, the lightness in your energy that says, I am not defined by who accepts or rejects me. And let's flip the script. Instead of asking why he rejected you, ask yourself why you should care. Ask yourself why you would hand over your power to someone who didn't see you clearly. The truth is, rejection is not proof that you're unworthy. It's proof that he wasn't the one aligned with your value at that time. And when you stop chasing and start owning that truth, he feels it. He senses the shift. And that's when the obsession begins, because he realizes he no longer has access to the version of you he once knew. And there's a saying that the person who cares less holds the power. But I would argue differently. The person who values themselves holds the power. Caring deeply is not weakness. Needing someone else to validate that care is. You didn't lose anything in his rejection. He lost something in not recognizing you. And the more you lean into that truth, the more he feels it, the more he replays in his mind what it meant to have you, the more he wonders if he made the biggest mistake of his life. And picture him lying awake at night, scrolling through old messages, replaying your laugh in his head, remembering the way you made him feel. That's not because you begged him to see your worth, it's because you didn't. You moved on, you rose higher, you became a living reminder of what he underestimated, and that's what he can't stop thinking about. And so rejection, it's not the end, it's the spark. It's the moment you gain the leverage you never thought you had. Because when someone rejects you and you refuse to collapse, you shift the narrative completely. You turn what was supposed to diminish you into the very thing that makes you unforgettable. And whether he admits it or not, he's thinking about you. He's questioning himself. He's realizing the truth. The person he rejected is now the person he can't get out of his mind. And this is where your true power begins to unfold, because the beauty of rejection lies in the fact that it forces you to confront yourself, to recognize that your value is not conditional, not negotiable, not dependent on anyone else's ability to see it. When he rejected you, it wasn't a verdict, it was an invitation for you to rise higher, to create a life so radiant, so magnetic, that the rejection becomes irrelevant compared to the person you're becoming. And here's the paradox. The more irrelevant his rejection becomes to you, the more relevant you become in his mind. And human psychology is fascinating. We crave what we can't have, and we obsess over what escapes our grasp. Right now, he may be playing it cool, acting like his decision doesn't weigh on him, but deep down, the mind never fully rests when it wonders about the unknown. And you have become the unknown. You've stepped out of his reach. You've stopped explaining. You've stopped chasing. And in doing so, you've created a mystery he can't solve. That mystery eats at him. He wonders where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, and most importantly, why you're not broken by his rejection. And because let's be honest, most people expect rejection to crush someone. They expect tears, pleas, endless questions like, why wasn't I enough? But when you rise above that, when you refuse to internalize his decision, you disrupt the pattern he thought he understood. You defy expectations. And nothing captivates the human mind more than someone who defies expectations. Suddenly, you're no longer just the person he rejected. You're the person who surprised him, who showed resilience, who refused to crumble. And that shift makes you unforgettable. And there's something intoxicating about someone who knows how to walk away with dignity. Think about it. The world is full of people who beg to be chosen, who compromise themselves just to be accepted, who cling to anyone that gives them a little attention. But you decided you don't need scraps. You decided that if he couldn't see your value, that was his loss, not yours. That level of self-respect is rare, and rare is always desirable. That's why he can't stop thinking about you. He may have thought his rejection put an end to your story, but in reality, it just marked the beginning of a new chapter where you hold the pen. And the irony is, the less you care about proving anything to him, the more curious he becomes. Because silence speaks volumes. Your silence says, I don't need closure. I don't need your approval. I don't need you to understand me to keep moving forward. That silence creates tension. It forces him to fill in the blanks. It makes him imagine scenarios, question decisions, and wonder if he miscalculated. And the mind hates unanswered questions. That's why he replays you in his thoughts over and over again. But this isn't about getting revenge or playing games. This is about you living in alignment with your worth. Because when you elevate yourself, when you dive into your passions, when you nurture your friendships, when you grow into the fullest version of yourself, you radiate an energy that no rejection can touch. And that energy is irresistible. It's not that you're trying to make him miss you. It's that you're too busy thriving to notice whether he does. And ironically, that's the very thing that makes him miss you more. And imagine walking into a room months later, not needing to prove anything, not needing to show him what he lost, because your life already speaks louder than any words could. Imagine the confidence in your posture, the glow in your skin, the laughter that comes easily because you're no longer weighed down by trying to be enough for someone who didn't see it. That's the moment he feels the full weight of his decision. Because while he's been haunted by the ghost of what could have been, you've been busy building a life he can only watch from the outside. And then even if he tries to move on, even if he dates other people, your presence lingers because comparison is inevitable. He will compare their smile to yours, their energy to yours, the way they make him feel to the way you did. And more often than not, the realization hits that nothing quite matches what he once had and dismissed. That's when the regret deepens. That's when the late night thoughts come, the what ifs, the maybe I made a mistake. But by then, it doesn't matter because you've outgrown the need for his validation. And this is where rejection transforms into the ultimate gift. Without it, you may never have discovered the depth of your own strength. Without it, you may have settled for being someone's option rather than demanding to be someone's priority. Without it, you may not have been pushed to rise to the level of independence and assurance you're stepping into now. So in many ways, his rejection was the catalyst for your breakthrough. It was the fire that forged your resilience. And now every time he thinks of you, every time he replays those memories, every time he wonders what you're doing, he's really just confronting the consequences of underestimating you. And you didn't lose him. He lost the version of you that was willing to give him a chance. And that version of you doesn't exist anymore. You've evolved, you've elevated, you've become someone even stronger, even more magnetic, even more untouchable. That's why he can't stop thinking about you, because he knows he no longer has access to who you are becoming. And nothing tortures the human mind more than the realization that something extraordinary is out of reach. And rejection, when embraced correctly, becomes fuel. It becomes the moment you decide to take back control, to write your story without waiting for someone else to validate your role in it. And that energy, that unstoppable forward momentum, is what keeps you at the forefront of his mind. Because while he may have thought his decision closed the door on you, he unknowingly opened the door to your evolution. And your evolution is the very thing that haunts him. And so don't view his rejection as a reflection of what you lack. View it as proof of what you're destined to become. Because every time you refuse to let it define you, every time you choose to rise, every time you keep moving forward without needing him, you etch yourself deeper into his memory. And the truth is, he can try to ignore it. He can try to distract himself. But deep down, he knows the one he rejected is now the one he cannot stop thinking about. And then the more time passes, the more this reality sinks in for him. At first, rejection feels final. It feels like he had the upper hand, like he was making a decision and moving forward without a second thought. But the human mind doesn't work like that. Our choices echo back to us, sometimes in whispers, times in screams. And when the dust settles, when the noise of distraction fades, that's when he starts to feel it. That's when the memory of you grows louder, more persistent, harder to ignore. Because the truth is, rejection doesn't erase someone's presence. It magnifies it, especially when the person they rejected refuses to crumble. And he remembers how you made him feel. And feelings don't disappear just because someone tries to suppress them. In fact, the more he tries to bury them, the more they surface at unexpected times. Maybe it's when he hears a song that reminds him of you. Maybe it's when he passes a place where you once laughed together. Maybe it's when he's sitting alone and suddenly the silence is filled with the echo of your absence. That's when it hits him, not just what he rejected, but the cost of that choice. But here's the beauty. You're no longer tied to his choices. You've detached yourself from the need for his recognition. And when you detach, you create space. That space is powerful. That space is what allows you to grow, to evolve, to step into new opportunities that expand your life in ways you never imagined. And ironically, that space you create for yourself becomes the very space he feels as emptiness. While you fill your world with new energy, new growth, new connections, he feels the void where your presence once was. And nothing gnaws at a person more than realizing the void is their own doing. And you see, rejection has two paths. One path is collapse, where you take it personally, where you let it define you, where you lose yourself in the shadow of someone else's decision. The other path is elevation, where you use it as a launch pad, where you build yourself higher, where you become a version of yourself that glows so brightly. It blinds anyone who ever underestimated you. You chose elevation, you chose to rise. And because of that choice, you're not only healing, you're thriving. And while you thrive, he wonders if maybe he should have held on a little longer. He wonders if he misread you. He wonders if in his haste to reject, he actually rejected something rare. And there is nothing more tormenting to the human mind than the thought of losing something irreplaceable. And that's what happens when you rise above rejection. You become irreplaceable, not because you're flawless, not because you never had doubts or fears, but because you showed a strength most people never show. You didn't cling, you didn't beg, you didn't grovel. You walked away with grace, and grace is unforgettable. And now imagine him watching from afar. Maybe he sees you through mutual friends. Maybe he stumbles across your name online. Maybe he hears about you indirectly. Every time he does, he notices something. Your light hasn't dimmed. In fact, it's grown stronger. And that realization unsettles him, because most people diminish after rejection, but you didn't. You multiplied. And that's when the thought loop begins. He starts replaying the past in his head, combing through every interaction, questioning what he missed, regretting how quickly he dismissed what was in front of him. And then while he's caught in that loop, you're out there writing a new story for yourself. You're investing in your passions, deepening your relationships, nurturing your mind and body. You're creating a life so rich that no rejection can overshadow it. And the richer your life becomes, the poorer his decision feels in comparison. That's why he can't stop thinking about you. Not because you're chasing him, not because you're trying to make him notice, but because you've created a reality that doesn't include him, and that reality looks brighter than the one he's living. And this is the paradox of rejection. The moment you stop fighting to change someone's mind is the moment their mind begins to change on its own. The moment you stop needing their attention is the moment they can't stop giving it to you in their thoughts. The moment you stop trying to be remembered is the moment you become unforgettable. Because memory doesn't cling to desperation, it clings to strength. It clings to uniqueness. It clings to the person who walked away when they had every reason to chase. And here's the truth that will always remain. When someone rejects you, they are making a choice based on the version of themselves they are in that moment. Their rejection has nothing to do with your future, your potential, or your worth. It only reflects where they are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually at that point in time. And people evolve, people change. And as he changes, as his perspective widens, he starts to realize what he dismissed. And by the time that realization hits, you've already outgrown the need for it. And that's what haunts him. That's why he can't stop thinking about you, because he knows deep down that the version of you he rejected is gone. You've transformed. You've leveled up. You've become someone even more radiant, even more self-assured, even more magnetic. And the tragic irony for him is that he doesn't get access to this version of you. He rejected one chapter, and in doing so, he closed the book on his role in your story. But the story didn't stop. It just continued without him. And so every time he remembers you, every time his thoughts drift back, every time he replays what he once had in his hands, he's not just thinking about the past, he's thinking about the future he no longer has with you. And that thought is heavier than any rejection could ever be. It's the realization that rejection didn't diminish you, it elevated you. And in the process, it left him behind, trapped in the loop of what could have been, while you move freely into what will be. And this is why rejection in the end is never about loss. It's about redirection. It's about being guided away from someone who couldn't see your value and being pushed toward the version of yourself who no longer waits for them to. It's about turning pain into fuel, turning doubt into power, turning silence into the loudest statement you could ever make. And while you build, while you grow, while you thrive, he sits with the one thing he cannot shake, the thought of you. Because no matter how far he runs, no matter how many distractions he chases, there you are, living rent-free in his mind, not because you begged to be remembered, but because you rose so high after his rejection that forgetting you became impossible. And then the truth is, there comes a point when his thoughts about you are no longer just fleeting memories. They turn into questions he cannot escape. He starts to wonder why, if he rejected you, he can't seem to stop circling back to the idea of you. He thought rejection would give him closure, that it would erase you from his world. But instead, it made you more vivid. You became the one thought that keeps resurfacing when he least expects it. And every time you come to mind, he feels the tension between the decision he made and the reality he now faces, that his decision didn't remove you, it magnified you. And what makes this even more powerful is that you aren't doing anything to force yourself into his world. You aren't chasing, you aren't pleading, you aren't proving, you're simply living. And that's what he can't shake. Because people forget words, but they never forget energy. They never forget the way you made them feel. And while he may have convinced himself at the time that he didn't need you, the emotional imprint you left refuses to fade. And there's a law of human nature that plays out here. We underestimate until we lose, and then we overestimate what we can't get back. That's exactly what he's experiencing. The moment he rejected you, he thought it was a simple decision. But now, with you no longer accessible, he elevates you in his mind. You become larger than life, not because you're trying to be, but because you walked away with your dignity intact. You didn't lower yourself to fight for his attention. And that self-respect has a way of making you unforgettable. And imagine how disorienting that is for him. He expected you to shrink after rejection, but instead you expanded. He expected you to fade, but instead you've become more luminous. That's why you linger in his mind like a song he can't get out of his head. The more he tries to silence it, the louder it plays. The more he tries to push it down, the stronger it resurfaces. And while he's caught in that loop, you're not even aware of it because you're too busy stepping into the life that was meant for you. And you see, what he didn't realize is that rejection doesn't diminish someone of true value. It refines them. It strips away the illusion that you needed him in order to be whole. And the moment you realize you were already whole, already complete, already powerful on your own, is the moment you stopped being defined by his choice. And that realization is what makes you magnetic. People are drawn to those who radiate completeness, to those who don't beg to be chosen, to those who carry themselves with the energy of I am enough as I am. That energy sticks in his memory because it's rare, and rarity is irresistible. And here's the irony. While he may have thought rejecting you gave him control, it actually gave it to you. Because you are the one who holds the narrative now. You are the one who decides how the story continues. And your story doesn't involve waiting for him. It involves rising so high that his rejection becomes a footnote rather than a headline. That's why he can't stop thinking about you. Because somewhere deep down, he knows the story moved on without him, and he wasn't the main character. And this thought eats at him over time. At first, it may just be an occasional flashback, a fleeting thought. But as you continue to glow, as you continue to move forward, as you continue to show up in the world without being diminished, the frequency of those thoughts grows. What starts as a whisper becomes a constant hum, and eventually a loud reminder that he let something extraordinary slip through his hands. And regret is a powerful force. It doesn't just sting once, it lingers, it festers, it grows with every passing day. But while he is stuck in that cycle, you're not. Because you've tapped into the beauty of detachment. You've embraced the fact that your worth was never tied to his acceptance. And when you detach, you reclaim all the energy you once poured into trying to be enough for someone else. And you redirect it back into yourself. That's why your light grows brighter. That's why your presence expands. That's why people notice you in new ways. And that's exactly why he can't stop noticing, even if he pretends otherwise. And think about it like this. The very moment you stopped needing him was the moment he started needing the memory of you. The very moment you released his opinion of you was the moment his opinion became obsessed with you. That's the shift rejection creates when you handle it with strength. And this isn't about revenge or trying to make him regret. It's about realizing that the best kind of impact you can have on someone is the one you make when you're not even trying. And he thinks about you because your absence is louder than your presence ever was. And that's what makes it so haunting. When you were there, maybe he took it for granted. Maybe he thought your energy, your kindness, your attention would always be available. But once it wasn't, once you were gone, the silence screamed louder than your words ever could. And silence is powerful. It forces him to confront what he pushed away. And it forces him to sit with the realization that not very one waits around to be chosen again. And this is why rejection transforms into the ultimate turning point. Because instead of breaking you, it reveals you. It shows you that you are not fragile, you are not dependent, you are not defined by someone else's inability to see clearly. And the stronger you stand in that truth, the more unforgettable you become. And while you may have thought in the moment of rejection that you lost something, in reality, you gained everything. You gained clarity, you gained freedom, you gained yourself. And that gain is exactly what he can't stop thinking about, because deep down, he knows he lost the very thing you found. And so when his mind drifts back to you, it's not just about longing or regret. It's about recognition that he misjudged you, recognition that you were not ordinary, recognition that he will never again have access to the version of you he once knew, because that version of you has evolved into something greater. And recognition is powerful because once it sets in, it cannot be undone. Once he sees it, he can't unsee it. Once he feels it, he can't unfeel it. And that's why the thought of you lingers endlessly. And rejection didn't make you invisible. It made you unforgettable. And no matter how far he goes, no matter how much time passes, no matter what distractions he chases, there will always be a part of him that circles back to you. Because when someone rejects a diamond while searching for stones, they don't forget the diamond, they remember it forever.